You're live, Your Worship.
Great, Council. I'd like to call this council meeting April 9th, 2024 to order with adoption of the agenda. So I'm going to make that motion. Councilor Cherry, Councilor Lucel, all in favor? Motion's carried. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 26th. So I'll make that motion. Councilor Devlin, seconded by Councilor Lucel, all in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, I'll move right on to 5A, Development Variance Permit 2023-017. Mr. Simon, do you have a presentation for us?
Your Worship, yes, Ms. Comars does have a presentation council would like to see. I see Ms.
Absolutely.
Del Sal has put it up on the screen. So Ms. Comars, welcome to
Ms. Comars? Present away.
Well, if I'm permitted to sit, I would prefer to, but if you'd like me to stand at the podium, I'm most welcome to do that as well.
You're good.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is a combination of a development variance permit with a development permit for the form and character of a new two-story, two-unit building being developed at 766 Law Road in the Big Eddy. I'm going to provide a bit of a background, the proposal overview, some policy direction, the staff evaluation, and eventually the staff recommendation for the DDP and the development permit. So this property, the subject property, is currently undeveloped, located at 766 Law Road in the Big Eddy. It is accessible by community water, but it would require private septic servicing. Septic servicing is being proposed at the rear of the lot of the subject building. The property is located in the floodplain and would need to meet the floodplain regulations at building permit stage. As I've said a couple times, it's located in the Big Eddy neighborhood. All the surrounding properties to this one and adjacent to it are zoned as M1 light industrial. However, the Big Eddy in this area does have some historical residential development that has happened over time. The OCP land use designation is commercial, and for this specific form and character DP, we are looking at an industrial development permit area. Bit of the overview for the form and character of the building, of a 2-unit residential building with parking and landscaping and variances for parking. So one of the variances that will be happening is a landscaping strip located just right here. Another variance that will be happening is for parking as well as loading parking, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I just want you to take a look at the image on the screen because it's giving you a bit more of a clear image, as was also found in the report. This subject property is accessed off of Law Road. This is a dead-end road in the Big Eddy, and access through the adjacent lot is not preferred for access to the subject property. This subject development will have enclosed waste and garbage bins located at the rear of the property. All the lighting is to be dark sky compliant. There'll be 2 parking spaces, one which will be a mobility space. The developer is also going to be installing a bike rack on the side of the property, and there's going to be some substantial landscaping, a landscaping buffer along Law Road to allow the property to not be as seen from the Law Road in general. The landscaping will have the landscaping will include evergreen trees, shrubs, and perennials, and will also include new planters and planter boxes. The building materials include vertical metal siding in charcoal gray and blue. The posts and beams will be in natural wood and finished and varnished. The decking and railings is to be made in composite and will be a veranda gray. And the stairs to the subject property will be metal threads and open. And the roof is to be done in torch-on style, and it's to be done in a colonial slate on a slight angle, and that is to help with snow retention on the roof. Some of the variances for this specific one are very specific to parking. And they're due to the size of the lot. 766 Law Road is a small rectangular lot, and in order to build on the lot, variances for parking are being requested to allow for more room for the industrial building to be constructed. During our APC meeting, one of the requests that came back from APC was to think about the longevity of the user and the feasibility of the space to incorporate a mobility space in general instead of just 2 regular parking spots. The applicant took that feedback, and in taking that feedback, they reduced the landscaping strip on one side in order to create a full-scale mobility space on one of the parking spots. Another reason for the staff evaluation for the reduction of parking in this relation to this subject property is because public transit and the local bus system is running close by, and the Big Eddy in particular on this dead-end street has accessibility for biking. This is also a low traffic street area. It's a dead-end street located in the Big Eddy. So some of the policy direction here, which is also found in the report, in regards to the variation, again, the variances that are being requested are to reduce parking from 2 to 1 for the industrial building. Part of that reason is based on our zoning bylaw, parking is calculated per employees. It's not calculated per gross floor area as you would see often in a commercial sized building. Another one, which we've talked about already as well, is the landscaping strip. The reason for the request for the reduction in the landscaping strip is to allow for a mobility parking space instead of a standardized parking space. And the last one is to the off-loading spaces, which I have wrong in my slide here. Required off-street loading spaces is because the loading spaces themselves can actually happen inside the bay. So each unit, when the doors are opened, the garage style doors, each unit has the capability of doing off-site loading inside the actual structure. Some of the policy direction in regards to the development permit, again, this is just for the form and character of the subject building. You can find my staff evaluation in the report itself as well, but also up on the screen here. We just feel that the proposed landscaping helps with the overall aesthetic of the subject property as well as the overall aesthetic of the Big Eddy. The off-site plan considerations also, after the APC meeting, they do incorporate that mobility space parking, which does allow for long-term feasibility for anyone that may or may not be renting that site. The building form and character, it just demonstrates an appropriate image and lends itself to enhancing the overall structures within the Big Eddy at this time. And the usage of color blocking at the front of the building breaks up the monotonous facade. It gives it a little bit of variation. And again, this is for an industrial building. It's not for a commercial based building. Environmental considerations, there's going to be new landscaping strips between Law Road and the subject site, which currently do not exist. The landscaping is going to include deciduous and evergreen trees. There's going to be recycling and garbage bins located at the rear of the property. We've also worked with the applicant. The original proposal had actually quite large recycling and garbage bins located at the rear, but in terms of feasibility for future tenants, the tenants would be able to bring those garbage bins and recycling bins to the front of the property. So they've reduced the size of the bins to allow for flexibility for the users that will be renting that space. And then importantly, all the lighting to be incorporated on this building is to be dark sky compliant. So my recommendations are up on the screen in regards to the DVP. It's to reduce the parking from 2 to 1 for warehouse storage for industrial uses. Again, industrial parking is done for number of employees, not for gross floor area. Second one is to the location of the parking facilities. So that's reducing that minimum landscaping strip from the required 2.0 meters to 0.89. And then the last one is to require off-street, to reduce the minimum required off-street loading spaces from 1 to 0. So these are the recommendations for the DVP. And then for the DP, the recommendation is to move forward with approving the DP for the form and character, the landscaping, and the parking for the construction of a 2-unit building. The recommendation is also for the owner to provide a 125% landscaping deposit. And if council would like for the owner to make any additions as cited by council during this council meeting to be considered at building permit stage. If you would like alternative solutions to the recommendations that are here up on the screen, please see the report.
Thank you, Ms. Colmars. Council, any question of Ms. Colmars regarding the presentation? Councilor Palmer?
Thank you, through the mayor. So do we know what the intended use of the building is?
The intended use at this time is for 2 renters to be able to rent it from the owner. The owner does seem to have two individuals in mind for this subject space, but I'm not privy to that information.
Right. And so, yeah, I'll just say to council, can I'll frame it in questions, I guess. So in it looks very residential.
Correct.
And that's not necessarily bad in an industrial site. And can it be used for residential purposes?
So through to the mayor, to Councillor Palmer, for M1 zoning, you are allowed to have 1 caretaker space on the subject property. However, the owner, this is an ongoing discussion that we did have, the owner felt that for this subject building, that was not the direction that they wanted to take. Also because this subject property is quite small and it does need to be connected to septic. The owner also is the adjacent owner to the subject property. So this is like their toe in the water for future development of a large scale site. They wanted to go through the development permit process and the building permit process and see what basically navigate what that looked like with the city before they decide to do more large scale development on the adjacent side, which if things move forward would include residential, but not for this subject site.
Interesting.
Any other comments?
I'm not sure if any other councillors have any comments.
Any comments from other councillors? Councillor Roman.
Your worship, thank you to the chair. A good report, Ms. Comores. Thank you for preparing it, and thank you for the presentation as well. I'm generally okay with the application. I don't really have any concerns, so I just have a question more for information. The first one is, thank you for providing the comments from the APC as well as what happened subsequently based on their comments. Just a question though, one of the ones was consideration of covering the exterior staircases. Is that, it looks like maybe hasn't changed or has, I'm not 100% too sure about that. I'm just seeking more information. And the second one is just for confirmation of my understanding is that the number of parking spaces limits the usage. So for example, if they were going to change the usage in the future to something else, you may or may not be able to do that based on the number of parking spaces you have on the property. So not really specifically related to this application itself, but just, to refresh my memory, just maybe a little bit of background on how that works. So through the chair, thank you.
Through the mayor to Aaron Orlando. So yes, APC did make comments regarding coverage of the stairs as part of their analysis of the form and character of the subject build. The applicant did not want to move forward with that. They did change the exterior materials for the stairs. They originally were in wood, but it was thought of in terms of longevity of the material that the ones that they've decided to move forward with would meet our inclement weather. I think the other reason is because this building is not for intended use for residential. There is ground floor access to the units with side doors on both units, as well as the overhaul garage door that's present. There is an interior staircase as well. So essentially the exterior staircase is an extra and for fire purpose. As for your parking question, it's a very small space, and in order to develop it, variances for parking need to be made for the way that they wanted to develop the dual unit. Typically, parking would be located in the rear of a building. That's the direction of our OCP, but with this one, that's where the septic is, and how would the building and the formation of the building look in that constraint. So if the change of use were to be in the future, as you brought up, the applicant, the owner, would be required to do either parking in lieu, which is currently $20,000 per parking space, and or they would have to have a partnership and or an agreement with a neighboring property, and that neighboring property would need a covenant on their title allowing for that parking to remain. So there are a couple tools that we could use in future for that to happen.
All right.
Thank you. Yeah, Your Worship, yeah, I didn't know about the covenant option as well, but yeah, thank you so much.
Councilor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I find it fascinating. So in itself, it's a pretty straightforward thing. I mean, even discussions about outside staircases as an industrial building, like normally that wouldn't even get flagged, I think, because it looks, my impression is that because it has this residential look that that's triggers those kind of questions.
Sure.
If it was residential, potentially with the new regulations coming in, it could be 4 dwelling units if it was going that way, but it's not. It raises a whole bunch of things, but I'm just sort of talking in a broad sense. So with all this provincial changes, with all the work the planning department is doing with our zoning changes and provisions, it opens up a whole, like it's a change on how we're doing planning. Like most of the stuff here, yeah, we're doing a bit of rubber stamping essentially, including the approval of the 125% thing. It's pretty much legislated, so we really don't have much option on those things. But on the real zoning and planning things, if this was residential, what would that look like? And so it just raises all these questions. And in Revelstoke, we have the history of other industrial areas, notably in the industrial park and out on west side. I believe those that changed that didn't have provision for residential has evolved over the last decade or so, allowing for people to live above and work below. And I sort of wonder if that's where this might be leading or may not be. So it just raises all those questions. So that's just a perception. I'll be in favor of this application. I do have a question on the septic. So that's conditional at the building stage. If it's in floodplain, is that so through the chair, is that an issue for getting approvals?
Through the mayor to
Yes.
Councillor Palmer. We just brought in our new floodplain bylaw, and essentially everything needs to be above the geodetic set level here of 442.1. So that would need to be demonstrated on their building permit plans. And in particular for the septic, they would be working with their wastewater professional to ensure that is properly connected and operational within the floodplain.
Right. So do your perk test in August, not October.
All right, any other comments? Councillor Stapler and Councillor Chair.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Ms. Komar. Just an observation, and thank you for the presentation. And the observation that I'm making is piggybacking on the comment of the septic field and the 2-yard dumpsters, the one that's proximal to the center line of the property, that could potentially pose an issue for the collection of that dumpster unless you're going to have the truck drive across your septic field.
Through to the mayor, to Councillor Stapenhurst, the negotiation for garbage and waste removal is between the owner and their tenant, and the intent is for the tenants to be taking the individual bins to the front of the subject property. It's not for the truck to come through, and that was a conversation that we had with the owner, because originally the dumpster bins were 4 yards.
Mhm.
So 4 yards, for comparison, if you were to Google it, it's like an industrial waste size bin, which would not work in the subject
Okay.
property. So they actually actually reduce the size of the bins to a 2-yard. So I grew up in a city that was our actual size bins, were 2-yard bins. And so they were on wheels and you would bring them forward. So we did work with the owner, the engineering department and myself worked with the owner to reduce the size of the bins to allow for tenants to be able to go into the farm.
Thank you for the comment.
Councillor Chair.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through the chair, I appreciate the presentation. I've got a couple questions and it may not exactly be pointed in the right direction. But if there was a change in use on this in the future, would the septic requirements also change?
I'm not a wastewater,
I
through
know.
the mayor, to Councillor Terry, I'm not a wastewater professional in this instance, so I can't,
I believe
it's a hard thing for me to comment on. But essentially, if there was a change of use and a higher increase of usership, typically that does mean that your septic system would need to reflect that.
Thank you. The reason I say that is that's one of the prohibitive items with developing the Big Eddy, especially with the provincial 4-unit per housing, just the cost of all that. Maybe you could answer this question. Do our bylaws require a backstop valve for septic units?
Through to the mayor, to Councillor Terry, I'm very sorry, I'm not a wastewater professional.
There's
That's
Mr.
something
Black's in
that
the
I
room,
need to-
maybe we can ask him his professional opinion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think Paul wants to answer.
I'm sorry, I thought you were pointing at him.
I wanted to Director Black, yes.
Yes,
Oh, it is? Okay, perfect. Then that negates a lot of the issues I can see coming from this. Then yes, thank you. I'm wildly in favor of this. I think the applicants did a great job in doing their best to develop this property with the constraints that they're on. And the variances are a reflection of that.
All right. Any other comments, or somebody want to put the motion on the table for me, please?
I'm just gonna let you do it.
It's a long one.
Okay. I move the development variance permit to be issued at 766 Law Road for the following variances to zoning bylaw number 2299A, section 13.2, required off-street parking. 1, to reduce the minimum required parking spaces from 2 to 1. B, section 13.5, location and sitting of parking facilities. 1, to reduce the minimum landscape strip from 2 meters to 0.89 meters. And C, section 14.3, required off-street loading spaces to reduce the minimum required off-street loading spaces from 1 to 0.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cherry, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried unanimously. Item number 2, please.
I will move the development permit be issued at 766 Law Road for the form of character, landscaping, and parking for the construction of a 2-unit industrial building.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Lucelle. Any discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 3.
And I will move that the owner provide security for the due and proper completion of landscaping in the amount of 125% of the amount identified in the cost estimate to the City of Revelstoke in form of cash or unconditional, irrevocable, auto-renewing letter of credit issued by a Canadian chartered bank or credit union prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Orlando. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Comars. Appreciate your presentation and your work on this one. All right, announcements from the mayor. So we're now going into spring cleaning, and I know our road crews are out there trying to get some of that gravel off the road, and some concerns from people on their bicycles. Road crews are doing what they can, and sometime this month and next month, Mr. Black will have the contractors come in as well to help our city staff. Is that correct?
I believe we already have a vac truck already in town.
Okay.
In addition to our regular fleet to supplement that. It has come to my attention that our bike routes are not fully swept at this point, and that will become a priority with the crews ASAP.
Perfect. Thank you. Also, we're getting some infrastructure done, water and sewer down First Street. That's going to be starting soon. And I just want to let the community know that we've made notices out there, and please be aware. And also from the finance department, utility notices have been mailed. They were mailed prior to the end of March. And not sure what's happened, why we are only getting them now, but they definitely have been mailed out. For those who are concerned about this, you can apply to go on a monthly payment plan. You'd have to pay the first 4 months of the year, and then the rest would come out monthly. So there are options out for residents on that. All right, we're going to move on to delegations and presentations, and we have a group from CMH, Mr. Butler and his crew. If you'd like to come forward, appreciate that.
Get set up here.
Your Worship, Councilors, my name is Dave Butler. I'm Vice President of Sustainability at Canadian Mountain Holidays. Good to see you, Your Worship.
Good to see you.
We'd like to come in while the slides are getting set up. We'd like to come in and talk to Council every couple of years and appreciate the opportunity, really just to say hello, let you know we're still in town, and give you a sense of some of the things we're doing that are maybe new and different than the last time we were here. And also do some rumor checks. If there's anything you want to ask any questions about or ask us about, we always look forward to that opportunity. So, is that up for you? Yes. So if you can do that, thank you.
Yeah. So we always do land acknowledgement, and we're training our staff to do such at all of our lodges and spaces. So our acknowledgement today is that we're honored to operate in territory of the Sinixt, the Secwepemc, the Ktunaxa, and our office is in the Stoney Nakoda Cree territory. Yeah, stoked to be able to do our business here and keep on learning. Some intros.
So for intro, myself, I just passed my 27th year with CMH recently, so I'm one of the old timers. Han Vincent is new to our team, so Han is the manager of community collaborations, a new role with us. So Han's looking after all of our connections with Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities throughout all the areas where we operate. We also have in the crowd today, starting point, some of our colleagues, Steve Lovenick, Sam Ewing, and Lily Lambert, who are all part of our Revelstoke management team, and behind them is Jen Irwin, also part of our management team here in Revelstoke. And on the other side is Michael Coyne. Mike's a ski guide here with CMH Revelstoke, and Michael's also with, does all of our roads and run development work. Works very closely, for example, with the Revelstoke Community Forest Corps team. So with all of us here today, we wanted to just talk a little bit about what we're up to, and Han will take over from here, and then I'll answer any questions you might have at the end. Sure.
Awesome, thanks, Dave. So some of you may know a lot about us as a company, and some may know a little, but we have 11 lodges across BC, starting all the way in the south from the Bugaboos, which is in the Columbia Valley, to Nakusp, and all the way north to Valemount and McBride. And then we have the wonderful Revelstoke CMH, where we partner deeply with the Regent. And it's kind of the hub for many, many of our other lodges that are in our surrounding areas, which you can refer to on the screen here. We've had a strong relationship with the Regent and the Berushi family for over 40 years and been working together to get people out in the mountains. Our founder, Hans Moser, you may know, is a legend in the world of mountain culture and history. We started heli skiing in 1965, and we started heli skiing in this area in Revelstoke in 1977. So it's an amazing history that we're happy to continue and be part of. So Revelstoke, we live, work, and play here. We have a long-standing relationship with this town, and yeah, we wanted to share our role in the community, kind of what we get up to, and maybe some things that you don't know that we do at CMH. There's some interesting stats on this, but I will direct your attention to the fact that we have 96 staff who call Revelstoke home, and the kind of average salary is $93,000 with those staff. We also support not just financially, but many community organizations, and that team right there does an incredible job of supporting our local food bank, women's shelters, getting, many of them have families, all our staff are in sports and things like that. We also have a philanthropy committee at CMH, and so we work to support different organizations within the community when we get applications for that. So this is a growing part of my role too, and we're really excited to keep building our community connections in Revi. With businesses, back to the money, we spend at least $4 million each year in this economy. So this is a list of just a few of the businesses that we support. And we always start locally and use what we can and use the relationships that we have here. So that's a significant number for our contributions to this space. Now, aside from financials, what we do support the community with is our ability to aid in public safety, so keeping people safe. We at CMH are the largest employers of mountain and ski guides in the world, and we do have great relationships with the other heli operators around here. And we work together to help support the public should that need arise, and unfortunately it has in the past. So every day, actually, all our guides meet and they input data to a public kind of website where there's information about the avalanche conditions in the snowpack. So all of that data is shared with the public to keep people safe and help people learn. We also have access to wonderful helicopters. And so these helicopters that are around, we have aviation support, we have fuel caches to support not only any accidents that are happening in the wintertime, but also with wildfire season, we're there to support the aviation side of that. So if we weren't there, we wouldn't have access to that. Marketing, we have a great reach across this globe, and we get to tell all of our guests and their friends and family about how great Revelstoke is. And Revelstoke is known to be legendary in our reach. We have a huge pull on socials, and we also have a global sales team. And so we have a sales network that extends all over the world, and CMH Revelstoke is a hit. And so we really work to support tourism and attracting people to this town. Right here, you can see one of our Indigenous groups that comes and hangs out at CMH Galena, which is just up the road. This is a Tanaha Youth Leadership Camp. We're in our 5th year of running this. And so we really try to work shoulder to shoulder with Indigenous nations. We have a lot of projects and partnerships going on with the Shwepum, and we're growing this, as I said, with my role, growing kind of our capacity to keep building on that. But yeah, we love working with our Indigenous partners, and it's a big part of what we do at CMH. We also have some strong partnerships with local forest companies. I'll change one thing here. It's not LP, it is Pacific Wood Tech that we work with, but we partner to support run cutting and fire suppression. And that's a lot of the work that Mike Acoyne does over here. And yeah, it adds to the economy a lot. Now, with any tourism company, we are faced with adapting to climate change. And as I've learned from Dave, we are part of the problem, so we have to be part of the solution. And so our whole department in sustainability is working to really focus on these 3 things. We want to track our emissions, we want to reduce our emissions, and third, we want to offset our emissions, which really excitingly we've started doing a couple of years ago to invest in the Great Bear Rainforest, which is an Indigenous-owned company on the coast and a local well-researched offset program. Additionally, in our sustainability department, we work to upgrade all our fuel systems to make sure that there's no leaking, no spills, everything is environmentally sound with that. We also have really intense wildlife protocols and procedures that we follow. And so each of our lodges has these protocols that are very diligently followed. And that's a really important point to note because we try very hard to never displace a wild animal. So these are like your big megafauna, our goats, our caribou, our grizzlies. So we have this really cool program called Snowbase. So this is a proprietary program that you can kind of see. And what we do in our guides meetings is if we see an animal, then we mark it on our mapping systems, and then it actually creates a polygon around that. And we know a certain distance that we actually stay away from that. Our flight paths are away from that, and it's for a certain amount of time. So that's something that takes a big part. We meet twice a day, and we're constantly adapting to where animals are and always trying to make the right choices. And that's part of the integrity of our guides and our company and what we're trying to do there. So yeah, that's a little bit about CMH and our role in the community, but please open to any questions or comments you may have.
Great, thanks, Lon. I appreciate the presentation and being here a long time. And my previous business relationship with CMH goes back 40 years. So
Wow.
it's been a good relationship at critical times. And so we appreciate what you do in the community. It's wonderful to see that you're doing that climate change and adapting and whatnot, as most businesses should in this day, but you're on the forefront, so I appreciate what you're doing. Councillors, any comments or questions from Mr. Buck, Ms. Spencer? Councillor Palmer, how about her?
Let's hoping the others go first, the easy questions. Thank you for your presentation and for coming to council. It's really valuable for us to understand. I did learn some stuff, so that's great. Just a quick question. You said the mapping program, what was it called again?
It's called Snowbase.
Snowbase, okay, great. So I just through the chair, a couple of questions on helicopters. So the city gets complaints every once in a while, and they want us to a few people want us to shut down helicopters or whatever, or allege that they're breaking rules and all that kind of stuff. Can you just sort of comment on that? Because if you could just comment from your perspective on the helicopter and what some people perceive as nuisance, or is a nuisance for them, I suppose, and how you're handling that operations.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Palmer, I think, in a general sense, helicopters are one of those things that can be triggers for some folks, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess in our operations, we're very, very careful, not just here in Revelstoke, but in all the areas. And we're following very careful flight paths and making sure we're the best as possible, not flying over residential areas, those kinds of things. So, there's those kind of protocols we follow. All of our pilots, and I'm absolutely convinced, because they are the best mountain pilots in the world, are following all the aviation rules to the best degree possible. Otherwise, they lose their licenses and things. So it's a very serious matter for them not to be taken lightly. But beyond that, I guess, and Han made the point, is helicopters have that duality. Some people don't like them, but the fact that they're in the valley here allows this amazing business, not just with us, but Selkirk Tangiers, Eagle Pass, and all of our colleagues in the industry, to create these businesses which allow people to be hired and those kinds of things, and create an amazing experience for people around the world. So there's no doubt there's a duality there, but I think we handle the both sides of that really, really effectively.
Great, thanks. Question on, first of all, I guess, so I'm going to go into caribou stuff a little bit here. So the Great Bear, so you said rainforest, so you supporting, I'm guessing that there's probably some business reasons that area. So my question is, why not caribou habitat as opposed to Great Bear?
So Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Palmer again, that is a specific offset project. So we actually are given carbon neutrality status because we offset. So in the offset world, and I don't know your background, but when you're looking for carbon offsets, we are buying carbon offsets in projects that are internationally verified, certified, and so there's a whole bunch of auditing behind them. And so the best project we found so far is the Great Bear Rainforest, which is a certified offset project, which allows us to get that carbon neutrality. Needless to say, if there were carbon offset projects that were closer to home, we'd be all over them. And we constantly ask our suppliers if there's something coming up yet. There's no sort of local carbon offset projects that are internationally certified yet. But to the point of your question, to say that we are, I'll put it differently. We spend a huge amounts of effort and time around caribou conservation. I've been involved myself as a professional wildlife biologist since at least early 2000s around caribou conservation. And I think we have the most sophisticated systems in place, bar none, to deal with caribou issues throughout our operations. And I know our guides will say every single day we are making decisions as a result of what's happening with caribou in their habitats. In Galena, for example, right now we actually have access to color data. So every single day we know where those colored animals actually are, and then we make our operating decisions as a result of those to avoid them, as Han said. So I think there's the offset piece. Caribou conservation are two very different things, and we're involved heavily in both of them.
Yeah, thank you through the mayor again. So that's the part that I learned and I was pleased to hear about that snow base concept. How often do your guides or pilots see caribou?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Council, I think it depends on the day, right? I mean, theoretically, the best day is when we see none, and we don't see any caribou or their tracks because we have a system in place where we just know they're over there, so we're going to be over here. It depends on the area. Sometimes we see them, a couple of times a day, depending on what's going on, but most of the time we rarely see them because we have these systems in place where we know where their habitats are. And you can imagine when the guides are out there every single day through the season, they have a pretty good sense of where the animals are moving, where they start early winter, where they move up to higher elevations later winter. They have a pretty good idea, probably better than anybody, as to where the animals actually are. And so we're able to avoid them for that purpose. So we don't see them that often. And the best days when we don't see them at all.
Right, very good. Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for that information. It's encouraging.
Any other comments from council? We're going to say thank you. Councilor Turner, go ahead. No?
Appreciate it. Thanks, through your worship. I just want to thank you for coming out. You guys employ many of my friends, and everybody has a lot of great things to say about it. I also want to add in that as much as I can learn from these slides, it might be better to get some firsthand experience. So if there's any opportunity for that, just let council know to see if somebody's available. Thanks.
In the words that I will hear from some people who are involved with CMH, you have the dime, they have the time. You can go. Absolutely.
Scrape the
Anyway.
change out of your couch, Councilor Chair.
Councilor Orlando.
Your worship, thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation. I do appreciate it. Just a general question. In terms of the next decades coming ahead with the operations, what sort of forecast are you seeing for the business overall in the area? And to give an example, they often talk about reduction in the number of skiers or skier visits or different changes in patterns or things that have benefited, for example, the ski resort business, such as the collective passes that they have available. What can people in Revelstoke expect from yourselves and the adjacent industry in the next coming decades? What are you sort of forecasting for the business, future numbers, usage, that kind of thing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, whose name I can't see, sorry.
That's all right.
How long do I have? Couple of hours. I think to answer your question in as concise a way that I could, I think if we knew that, it would be a lot easier for our investment cycles, quite frankly. But I think in a general sense, there's no doubt that climate change is playing a big role. And so we're doing a lot of work on, as Han said, not only kind of working on our actual footprint piece and doing that in the offsetting, but also looking more at our resilience piece moving forward, because there's no doubt things are changing. We used to say, in a normal winter, we never say that anymore. So that piece is changing. The global geopolitical climates are certainly changing, and so we're trying to pay attention to that. I'll be honest, one of the biggest challenges we face in thinking about our future is our tenure situation, so land tenures. The challenges we face in dealing with the provincial government around those is becoming very significant. And so that links directly to our investment picture. And so I think in the future, it's hard to know because things are changing probably more than we ever have. I think, for many, many years, certainly through my early career, things were relatively stable. Winters are a little bit different, but we kind of knew what we were dealing with. But now there's so many pieces changing that it's quite a dramatic, challenging, dynamic atmosphere for us. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. Change is constant for us now.
If I may add to American Councilor Orlando, we do have an amazing summer product as well. So I work as a guide in our summer program, which is heli hiking, and it's actually incredible because it's that solace in nature that you can't really get on the trails anymore. So that's something that as we move into the future with our business models, we can open more lodges and have that as a viable product.
Yeah, Your Worship, just a quick follow-up question regarding and thank you for the response regarding the tenure question. Do you anticipate that that question is going to be something that is going to be part of a provincial engagement process or or whatnot coming up. So for example, my basic understanding is that early organizations like CMH or Selkirk Tangiers had very large tenures. Subsequent operations like Eagle Pass have smaller places put together, and then there's been transformational change at the provincial government level on tenure systems, and including a lot more First Nations involvement and clear proclamations from the government on their intents and directions in the future with relations to that. My question is just, I guess, focused on is where does councils or regional districts or those kinds of organizations have an inroad to involvement in those questions as they are being developed in the future from the provincial government? I was wondering if there's any insight into that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor. So yes, there's definitely a lot of engagement going on right now. We at CMH are part of Helicat Canada, which is our sector association, and in turn, Helicat is part of a group called the Adventure Tourism Coalition. That's 19 adventure tourism sector associations across the province, which is everything from ourselves to guide outfitters, bear viewers, the snowmobile community, you name it, are all part of that. And we're actually in some conversations with the provincial government right now about the tenure system in general. You mentioned large. I would argue different. We've got tenders that allow us to do a business are much smaller than say a TFL by orders of magnitude. It's also the length of term that for us, you can imagine a 5-year license for us would look at very differently than a 30-year license from the perspective of investments. So I think from a general sense, there's a lot of engagement going on. I can't really speak to what the province might do in terms of engagement with regions or municipalities, but I do know there's a significant amount of extra work being done with institutions now. And as Hans said, part of our role in partnering with them is to kind of go to the province shoulder to shoulder and talk about the values we bring economically, culturally, and environmentally. And that's engaging in some really interesting conversations.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
it. Councillor Chair.
Thanks, Worship. Sorry to ask a second question here. Can you elaborate a bit more on the summer operations and what lodges offer it?
Go ahead.
Yes, we have 3 operations right now, the Caribous in the north, the Bugaboos and Bobby Burns in the Columbia Valley. So they all run programs that are about 4 days long. We offer guided hiking through mountain ridge tops, and then we also have a product called Via Ferrata, which is like assisted climbing, clippies, and it's breathtaking and thrilling and incredible. I didn't put pictures of summer. We can do that next time.
Awesome, I appreciate that.
Got some excitement going around the table. Thank you again for what you do. For me, the foresight that Mr. Moser had in bringing this type of adventure to our community was, I don't think he even thought that this is what this is going to entail. Every time I see a helicopter in the sky, I think things are happening. The economy is being, basing and emboldened, but also people are on an adventure in our community. And then I think of the safety things because of that foresight Mr. Moser had has brought helicopters to our valley, and that keeps people safe. I know people whose lives have been changed because these helicopters were here. And CMH was, trying not to get emotional, but CMH was gracious enough to say, we're here to help. We'll fly those people out and make sure they get to hospital care. So thank you for what you do and being present in our community. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that. And know your personal connection. That's a thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much today.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you, Councillor.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Council, let's move on to Section 8, recommendations from committees. The grant and aid recommendations being approved. Someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Cherry.
Move that the 2024 grants and aid be approved as follows.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Orlando, any discussion on the motion or the grants and aid? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Moving on to tax distribution. Someone want to put that recommendation on for us, please? Councillor Devlin?
Move that the city's 2024 tax distribution, which reflects no substantive changes from those in 2023 and applies a tax rate increase equally across all classifications.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Palmer. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Number 2.
Move that increased tax revenue due to a shift in classifications be transferred to the tax equalization accumulated surplus.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Cherry. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. 3.
I'll move that any excess non-market change earned in 2024 is used towards unforeseen expenditures or transferred to reserves based on the final operating surplus for the year.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Palmer. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, just for the sake of anybody that's watching this on YouTube, we talked about this stuff, had a good presentation from the Director of Finance in the Committee of the Whole. So if you want to know what all these words, we were educated at that time, was committee or Finance Committee.
Yes.
And I believe hopefully that was televised. Maybe it wasn't, but no, unfortunate. So if anybody has questions, phone the Finance Department.
Anybody got Councillor Palmer's number?
Or contact me. I think I sort of have a general, but the finance will do a better job.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all is in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 11, staff reports. 11A. Someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Lucille.
I move that the revised terms of reference for the Social Development Committee dated April 9th, 2024 be approved.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Devlin. Any discussion on the motion or terms of reference? Ms. Mather, you are online, or Moffat, pardon me, you are online. Would you like to make comment?
Sure, Your Worship and Council. I don't have too much to add in here. It's a bit of a housekeeping item, actually. So the Social Development Committee, we were reviewing some files and we found a terms of reference document that was dated back in February of 2021 that just hasn't been presented to Council. So we wanted to present that here. And then it's primarily just to standardize the dates of the meetings and to change the number of seats we have to help meet quorum. So the original was 8 to meet quorum. We want to change that to 7. We've just been having trouble making sure we have enough people in the room to have our meetings. So just standardizing some of those policies.
Okay. Any comments or questions from Council for Ms. Moffat? Saying none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Moffat. Appreciate your input. Moving on to item 12A, correspondence. We received a letter from WildSite. Anyone on Council want to make comment on that letter? Councillor Palmer?
So if I recall correctly, we were to have an arrangement to tour that area. Is there any update?
Yeah, we're looking at probably another month or so down the road. There's still snow in the backcountry. So I spoke with Mr. Bolivar a couple of days ago, and definitely on stream to get that done. And so if there's any questions regarding anything further regarding that letter, any other comments? Seeing none, definitely the RCFC Board of Directors are aware of the letter. They've looked into things like carbon credits and it's unattainable for RCFC until the government changes legislation. We're not allowed to do that. They have a whole raft of things that we're doing with RCFC, but I think that where we're at now is to get WildSite out and show them what we're doing. RCFC is going to continue working with the provincial government on their forestry management and go from there. Seeing no other comments, I will move on to communications, economic development.
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Councillor Orlando.
Councillor Orlando, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Oh, Your Worship, yeah, sorry, apologies, I stuck it up there at the last minute. This is on item 11A, the letter from
Yep.
where I'm at, the letter from the WildSite. Just for confirmation of knowledge and, understanding, 12A, I should say. when we have an item on the agenda, including a correspondence item, this is an opportunity for any council member to make a resolution related to that if they so wish. Recently, we adopted a notice and motion policy, which is another way to get something on the agenda, but at any time, on an agenda item, you could make a proposal or make a motion there. So I just wanted to, put that out there in case, just for procedural reconfirmation of my knowledge of that, that if people wanted to, this would be an opportunity to as well. So,
Great.
thank you.
Appreciate that.
Your worship, I think it should also be noted that RCFC board makes decisions for the RCFC tenureship, not council.
That's
I
correct.
could be correct, but just wanted to make. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Okay.
You're correct. All right, gonna move on to, sorry.
Yeah. And just to reaffirm the statement there, I'm speaking generally about making motions, not specifically to making a motion about this agenda item, but just wanted to make the point that people do have the opportunity at this point to make motions regarding it, whatever individual council members' wishes are.
Good. I appreciate that. No other comments? All right, I'm going to move on to item 12A. 13A, Roscommon Area Economic Development Commission meeting minutes. And Councillor Orlando, you sit on that commission. Do you have any comments on those minutes?
Yeah, Your Worship, I just want to provide a quick update to council. I want to thank Ms. Moffat, who was just presenting earlier for all her hard work in organizing for the Economic Development Commission as we're down a bit on staff resources. So quick update. The commission made recommendations regarding economic opportunity fund funding. These are to fund specific projects that are being undertaken and were applied for by organizations including the Revelstoke Cycling Association, Alpine Club of Canada, Climbers Access Society, Revelstoke Paddle Sport Association, and a project by the Chamber of Commerce. So that was exciting to see. The commission visited the Revelstoke Dam and had some communications there, and it was actually quite a fruitful visit because we were able to get an update on what's happening with projects in the Revelstoke at the dam. Two things of note. Number one, the BC Hydro will be doing significant upgrades to the computer systems at the dam, associated electrical work. And the second thing is that Unit 6 is more or less on again. It was definitely on for years, and they were engaging in planning processes to put an extra generator in the last penstock that was built when the dam was built. However, in late 2021, BC Hydro backed away from that in an application to the BC Utilities Commission. Now, the latest sort of update is that they are back on again. One of the very interesting things, and again, I have to thank CAO, Mr. Parliament, for attending this, is having some proactive discussions about housing, what that will mean, because that will require over a decade, 400 workers to be here. And it was actually really interesting to hear some of the innovative stuff that innovative projects and initiatives that BC Hydro is involved in already in other parts of the province, such as building a hotel for First Nations communities so that they can house their staff during the project, then working to transition ownership of that facility over to the community there for use in the years following that. So certainly economic development staff are following up on leads and possibilities, so it's great to do that. We're planning to have a Downey tour in the upcoming. We're planning those ahead. Mr. Parliament updated the commission on work going on to improve the airport and do upgrades there. That's previously been updated here to council, so I won't get into that. He also updated the commission on plans for the multi-use facility. Another update was on the Fab Lab lease agreement, so working to do that. We will be doing some structural review on a new item regarding the Economic Development Commission. So that was outlined again by Mr. Parliament. I think that's the majority of. Oh, one thing is I'd like to thank all the work that Community Development Coordinator Taha Atia did. At the meeting, he announced his resignation from the city. So again, just a great asset to the community. He will be moving on to another great role in the community as well, which I don't think has been announced. So we're just excited to have him here and continue his work that he started well with the city. And a few other things, but I think those are some of the highlights from the meeting.
Great, appreciate it. Any comments or questions for Councillor Orlando? Councillor Palmer.
Through the mayor, the Downey tour, is that for the Economic Development Commission, or would council be in?
Economic Development Commission, I could always swing inviting more people. I could send an email right now, see if that's possible.
Yeah, it'd be of interest. I haven't spent a long time since.
Sure.
Yeah, if any of you would like to do a tour, that is worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I will do that right now.
All right, moving on to Advisory Planning Commission minutes. Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Council, this was a very short meeting, so we only had one agenda item. It was for a housing development just by the hospital on Newlands Road. Oh, correct, on Newlands Road. We had 12 townhomes that'll be coming to the area, 2 units of 6. Each dwelling will be 2 stories, developed with 3 bedrooms, an office, a den, and 2.5 bathrooms. Pretty excited by the look of it. I think it fits the neighborhood quite well. The pedestrian access will be from Newlands Road, but the vehicular access will be through Williams Gate.
Okay, great.
So pretty interested. If anybody has any other questions, happy to answer them. But if you are interested in the development, take a look at the meeting minutes.
Perfect. Good. Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Cherry? Seeing none, I'll move on to Finance Committee meeting. Pretty easy to see that the 2 motions we passed for the grant and aid and the tax distribution have just been passed here in council and now have been formed as part of the record. So that was pretty much it. And just before I go on to questions from the press, as I spoke earlier in my mayor's message about the utility, so I'm just going to go back to that, basically say that utility mail out and whatnot has been disseminated. However, you have comments, Mr. Parliament?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't usually do this, but I do want to inform the public through today's council meeting that the city of Revelstoke has received a ton of phone calls and emails from concerned residents on the narrow window to pay their utility bill. As everyone knows that has been following this, the deadline was imposed as of April 30th. It's the first time we've separated taxes from utilities. And to some, that has been a very confusing effort, but it's also been compounded by the fact that the window to pay was narrowed when the bills, which are sent out by mail, end up in Vancouver, and then there's a delayed reaction by the time they get back to Revelstoke. So in recognition of that, staff are pleased to announce that we will extend the deadline for an additional 48 hours. I would like to do it longer, but we just simply can't because of logistics. So we're going to extend the deadline for an additional 48 hours to May the 2nd, recognizing the delay from Canada Post, which has nothing to do with the city of Revelstoke. We have accomplished the goal, council, by separating the 2. And what we're trying to do is make sure that staff are prepared, because most people pay at the last minute, and that they're available on that day. The problem with extending it into mid-May is that's also the time we're doing tax notices, and it puts tremendous stress on staff to accomplish both. So this is a one-time only 48-hour extension. I'm also appealing to the public that there have been some disturbing calls and threatening comments directed at staff. I know the public are frustrated with Canada Post, but that has nothing to do with the city of Revelstoke. Okay? Please, I'm asking the public to be respectful and courteous when you're dealing with municipal staff. All they're doing is implementing the goals that council created late last year when it was decided that we're going to go ahead and separate the two, utilities and taxes. So staff is just carrying on council's directive here. Most people are good, but I just ask those that are frustrated, please understand that this has nothing to do with the city. And in recognition of that, the 2-day extension will be granted. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Parliament. Appreciate those comments, and thank you to Finance Department for accommodating that. Ms. Delasal, do we have any questions from the press?
We have no questions from the press, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. I'd like to move in camera pursuant to section 90.1A, D, and K of the Community Charter. Someone want to make that motion? Councillor Devlin, Councillor Staples, all in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back in camera. Thank you.